time, there was a kingdom called Cackling Vineyards, named so due to the merry folk who grew grapes upon its hills. Generally a peaceful kingdom, it had a few annual tiffs with the neighboring states of Goatsville and Olive Gardens. Today, I will tell you a tale of these three cities. You see, each of these lands produced a product of their namesake. Cackling Vineyards produced wine and grape jelly. Goatsville produced cute pets and yummy cheeses. And Olive Gardens produced affordable yet mediocre food for the whole family. That's not important to the story, just doing a little bit of world building. Anyway, the queen of Cackling Vineyards, Claudia Freestyle, was betrothed to Henry Glutz, the Prince of Goatsville. The union was meant to repair the recent cheese wars that had ravaged both nations down to their last armies. To secure the marriage, the king of Goatsville sent portraits of Henry to Claudia to woo her. She was glad that they were appropriate portraits after she received some scandalous paintings from Olive Gardens. Nobody likes an unsolicited nude, even ones with skillful use of chiaroscuro and some impressive pointillism. Anyway, she found him to be quite winsome from the paintings. On the wedding day, she walked down the aisle in a gorgeous ivory dress made of the finest silk from these weird little worms that ate the grapes. As Henry lifted her veil, she saw him for what he was: hideous. The thought of their impending wedding night repulsed her. She was done with political romances. She fled from the altar and declared war upon the other two nations. With the element of surprise and the threat of an embargo on wine, they won handily. She ruled with a stern grace, ensuring that all the women and men of the newly united kingdom of Cackling Goat Gardens would never have to marry who they didn't want to ever again. The end.
A land called the Cackling Vineyards, known by that name for its namesake, its vineyards of grapes. It was known to have, although it was a peaceful and fun area, it was known to have a little bit of tiffs every now and again with its neighboring countries of Goatsville and the Olive Gardens. Also named for their exports, Goatsville exported cute pets and cheeses, and Olive Gardens exported affordable and delicious foods. Now, this is a time of interest going on right now in the kingdom. All three kingdoms, as the princess of the Cackling Vineyards, Christina, was to marry the king of Goatsville, Joe Goatsworth. And he, in an attempt to woo her, sent her many of paintings of her, beautiful paintings, and when she saw them, she looked upon them and knew that they were beautiful, and were happy that they were at least decent, unlike the Olive Gardens, which had sent some nudes, which no one likes. No one likes unsolicited nudes. Don't send a nude, painted or otherwise, unless you're asked for it. And so, the wedding day was set. Cackling Vineyards and Goatsville were to be united. And as Christina walked down the aisle in her beautiful ivory dress made by those little worms that ate the grapes and gave string in return, she saw something. She saw, for the first time, Joe Goatsman. And he was hideous. He was ugly and disgusting. And so she ran. What else could she do other than run? She ran back to her kingdom and declared war on the other two kingdoms, and with the threats of a wine embargo and the element of surprise, she won handily. And renamed it the Cackling Goat's Garden. And then all three kingdoms lived in harmony, as she stated out in her first royal decree that no woman or man would ever have to marry someone who they didn't want to, and it was glorious, and everyone was happy. The end.
Once upon a time, there was a kingdom, I think, by the name of Cackling Vineyards. And this kingdom was a happy kingdom. However, sometimes it didn't get along so great with its neighbors. Its neighbors were Goatsville and the Olive Gardens, both aptly named for their exports. Goatsville exporting small tiny pets and cheese, and the Olive Gardens exporting very affordable and yet delicious foods that some people can't eat because they've gotten sick there once or twice before, but that doesn't matter. Well, one day, the princess of the Cackling Vineyards was to be wed to the king of Goatsville. And they thought that maybe this union would bring them all together and they could have cute pets, cheeses, affordable foods that some people get sick on, but other people seem to enjoy for God only knows what reason, seriously. And wine, because Cackling Vineyards, I'm assuming, makes wine. So they were to be wed and have a joyful union. And the day of the wedding came. And Christina, the beautiful princess of Cackling Vineyards, finally saw for the first time her husband-to-be, Joe Goatman of Goatsville. She had never seen him before this day, and upon her first viewing of him, she became almost as ill as I got at the Olive Garden that time, because I'm telling you, their food... She couldn't marry him because he was so hideous to her. It made her sick inside. So she did what any princess would do in this situation, and she ran away. She ran away from the wedding and ran away from Joe Heimer. And she took over the other two kingdoms and formed one great big joyful kingdom under her own rule. And her first decree as queen of the Olive Goat Vineyards was that no one ever should have to marry someone that they don't love. The end.
Okay, so once upon a time, there was a kingdom called Cackling Vineyards. Off to a great start. And Cackling Vineyards did not always get along with their neighboring countries, kingdoms, which were known as Goatsville and Olive Garden. And Goatsville and Olive Garden were named for, of course, their exports. So Goatsville exported small pets and cheeses, and the Olive Garden exported food that most people like, but it seems that made Nikki sick one time, and now she can't eat it anymore. Now, Cackling Vineyards was preparing for a wedding of their own beautiful princess to the king of Goatsville. And they hoped that this wedding would help ease tensions between their kingdom nations. And they looked forward to a beautiful union filled with tiny pets and cheeses. And at this point, we're going to assume that Cackling Vineyards exports wine. So also lots of wine, which is the key to any happy marriage. So the day of the wedding came, and the beautiful Princess Christina of Cackling Vineyards was preparing to meet her new fiancé, soon-to-be husband, the King of Goatsville, Joe Goatsman. And when she saw him for the very first time, her stomach churned the same way Nikki's does when she has Olive Garden. He was so ugly and horrifying that she couldn't possibly marry him. He made her sick. And so she did what any woman in that situation would do, and Christina ran. But Christina didn't live her life in exile. She united all three kingdoms into Goat's Garden Vineyards. And then she had all of the exports, and they made a rule that no one ever had to marry anybody they didn't love. The end.
Once upon a time, there was a kingdom known as Cackling Village. And Cackling Village was known as the place that made wine. And around Cackling Village, there were two other villages known as Goatland and Olive Garden. All three of these villages were named for things that they produced, such as wine from Cackling Village, such as goats from Goatland, and goat-like things. And then Olive Garden was known for its olives and things that make Nikki Six. So one day in Cackling Village, there was a wedding to take place. And this was not just any wedding. It was the wedding between the princess of Cackling Village, Christina, and the prince of Goatland, Joseph. And this was the first time the two of them had ever met. And as soon as Christina laid eyes on Joseph, she knew he wasn't the one, because he was disgusting. He was gross. Her stomach churned. She wanted nothing to do with him. So she obviously ran away, far away from Joseph and the three kingdoms. But then, after some time passed, she realized that she missed her homeland of wine and goat-like things and Nikki Six, and went back and united the three villages and changed their name to Cackling Goat's Garden. And they all three made tiny goats and wine and olives and Nikki Six. And then they lived happily ever after with all of those things. The end.
So once upon a time, there were three villages. The first one was Cackling Village, which was known for its wines. And the two neighboring villages were Goatland, which was known for goats and goat-like things. And the other was Olive Garden, which was known for olives and Nikki Six. Motley Crue fans, I guess. So one day, the princess of Cackling Village, Christina, was set to marry the prince of Goatland, Joseph. They had never met before, and they first laid eyes on each other at the wedding. And when Christina saw Joseph, she saw how disgusting and gross he was, and she was like, no, this is not the guy for me. I can't do this. So she fled in a hurry. And after some time had passed, because she had gone very far away. So after some time had passed, she realized that she missed her homeland, and she really, really missed the wine. So she went back and she united the three kingdoms. And the three kingdoms became Cackling Goatland Garden. And they then produced all the wine and the little goat things and olives and Nikki Six. The end.